welcome guys, thank you so much for being here. My name is Adam Walker, and before I get started with my presentation, reverb. Before I get started with my presentation, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the Indigenous ancestors of this land. Thank you for protecting it, nurturing it, and helping us come here to gather for this amazing event. And thank you all for being here. And I'll just let you know, I've got really bad eyesight, and my normal reading glasses are like way over the other side of the sight. So please excuse me if every now and again I put my sunglasses on. It's not being rude, it's just because I need to see. So, guys, I'm here after a lot of sort of thinking about how I might be able to contribute to this event. What I essentially decided that I wanted to do was, I've been on a 10-year academic journey, and it's kind of coming to a phase of transition, or transcendence is probably more accurate. And so I really kind of wanted to take the opportunity to sort of summarize my academic journey and particularly what I've learned and share it with my tribe. So that's why I'm here. Now, I would like to introduce myself to you guys properly in just a moment, but the overall summary of my experiences and insights I have titled Metacognition, Empathy, and the Recovery of the Human Spirit. Hey, baby. So we'll get into all of that in a moment and what it means, but first of all, this is just a basic rundown of what I want to try and cover in this short space of time. I know it's difficult to see, so I thank you for bearing with me. But I'm just going to run through. I want to share a little bit about who I am. Apart from my family there, I see a lot of faces that I haven't had the opportunity to engage with before. So I want to share a little bit about who I am and why I'm standing out in front of you and what I have to offer. From there, I want to talk about why I've used this term recovery and why it might be integral as a dialogue. I'm going to look then at the patterns of cultural pathology which I've been exposed to through this kind of collective, and that is going to steer my talk into discussing how we have these nodes of consciousness which, when aligned, can be very serving and adaptive to us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm also going to talk about what I've learned through my academic studies about accessing these nodes. And I'm going to share that with you and give to you the insights that I've come to receive through my academic journey. I'm going to then talk a little bit about how I've come to understand how we can recode our intentions toward a platform of being able to feel together what is going on here and what journey we would like to set in motion together, which then culminates in my thesis on the recovery of the human spirit. So, a little bit about me, because I haven't really had the opportunity to speak in this sort of platform before. I have been an academic for the last 10 odd years, but felt really uncomfortable there. And so this is the first opportunity I've had to say g'day and share with you guys who I am and what I'm about. So I just want to run through a few little things. My actual academic qualifications is I did a Bachelor of Psychology. I did an honours thesis in psychology, which was titled Can Skateboarding Help Manage the Manifestations of ADHD, which I'll talk a little bit more about. I also did a Bachelor of Social Sciences and became fascinated by anthropology and sociology, particularly altered states of consciousness, shamanism, and particularly what I refer to as neo-tribalism, and how these thread back into the discipline of psychology, and more so my understanding of psychology. So they're my qualifications, if you like. I've spent the last 10 years delving deep into the fields of psychology, anthropology, and sociology. And this presentation is a big summary of it. It's a big mash together of those three disciplines of academia. I was born in Adelaide in South Australia, for anybody that would like to know. If there's anybody who knows me from Adelaide. I'd absolutely love to meet you later. But I live here now in far northern Queensland. So it's an absolute honour to have Enki and Gaia here in my hometown. I live here with my incredible, beautiful wife, Bridie, and our two amazing children, Cody and Tyler. So I'm a father and a husband. What I've been doing for James Cook University over the last sort of 4 or 5 years or so is lecturing. And my specific field that I've been resonating with is social psychology. Now, one of the aspirations that I have here today is I find that whenever I tell people that I've been studying psychology, I get this recoil. You've had it as well? It's a very interesting phenomenon. And I actually want to be really open and transparent with you guys. I actually find it really prominent within this festival grouping culture as well. My summary of it is that I think a lot of us who end up here together at these events, as a tribe, we have found our own way here, and a lot of us have been through the system, perhaps. We've had exposure and experience being pretty much systemically abused by the discipline of psychology, so I totally understand it. I fully get why when I say that I've been studying psychology, people recoil and jump back. Well, one of my aspirations here today is to actually try and neutralise a little bit of the bad work that my peers have done in this discipline. And one of the transitions that I am making in transcending this academic course is to never really be known as a psychologist at all. But for the case of summarising what I do, I have now become quite comfortable actually sharing with others that I'm a visionary social psychologist. Now, very specifically, if you haven't ever had the opportunity to study psychology or any academic discipline that looks at human behaviour, social psychology is very specifically, it's nothing to do with clinical psychology. It's not about trying to fix people that are broke. My main interests have been much more to do with interactivity, the dynamics of how we get along. How do cultures flourish, thrive, or extinguish themselves? How do we actually neutralise concepts, cognitive concepts like discrimination? I sit around with incredible people in rooms talking about how Facebook is actually changing our consciousness and how it may be totally transforming our communication systems. This is the kind of work that we do within the field of social psychology, very specifically. Ty, do you have a question? What is it, buddy? The future is the question. Great question! Great question, son. Great. Okay, cool. That is a very good question. So, I wanted to make that clear. My lineage is in social psychology. I also operate what is starting to be known as a visionary community hub called Compound. If you guys are around for a little bit, if you're staying on for a clip or whatever, you're always welcome at Compound. It's a tiny little wooden hut that resides in the beautiful original markets of Kuranda in the rainforest. And we essentially sell skate stuff. That's what it appears we do. But this has been my ambition, to try and work with the dynamics of a very, very maladapted pattern subculture. Skateboarders are people who, right from their get-go, were totally branded as deviants. Much like people that take drugs and party and rock and roll. Deviants. Which is why I felt that this was relevant. Sorry, camera. Sorry, camera. So, yeah, this little hub Compound has been an incredible journey. I just want to tell you a little bit about it. My wife and I started Compound. We actually inherited it. some guys had already started a skateboard store here in far northern Queensland, and they were operating like anyone operates a skateboard store. We get skate staff, we look really cool, and we base membership on whether or not you're cool enough. Standard skateboard model. Seems to work in most skateboarding hubs, urban hubs around the world. Well, the unfortunate thing about this is that it didn't work. It didn't work for this store that was here in Cairns, and it hasn't worked really all around the world. That's why in Australia, we have these stores like City Beach or any other franchise that has essentially just gone, wow, here is a culture that are so do-it-yourself. They've invented themselves, they've constructed themselves, and look at their energy. You ever watched a skateboarder attack a set of stairs? 100 times, they'll fall down and they'll get back up and they'll do it again. People see that stuff and they go, wow, I can make money off that. Here comes City Beach. Here comes all these big franchises. So this commodification, and I heard Dan was the speaker before me, yeah? I heard him talking about money, and this is an amazing node for me to jump straight, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. This commodification and consumerism of skateboarding has essentially dissolved it and its integrity as a culture, so much so that with our store, we build it up with the goal and the ambition to be able to have young skateboarders who have never been given a shot at anything, who have been labelled deviant right from when the moment they found skateboarding, and it was one of the first moments that their heart opened and they realised that there was something in this world that helped them be them. They've basically been a deviant. So when society labels people deviant and then they reinforce this with images on TV, and people that skateboard are also drug takers and graffiti writers and all the rest of it, these participants of this culture end up, in psychology we call self-prophesized deviants. So we gave people the chance in our store to come and have opportunities to work, to earn money, to be able to learn business structures and how to actually have a place in this community. We had one of the worst ones we had was our till was completely stolen. Keys slid under the door and a note saying, "I'm so sorry," and they left town. Now this is a culture that is its own worst enemy. That's my main point. And this is one aspect of why I've really tried to crack it open and understand it more. What I found is what I'm hoping to share with you guys today. I also develop skateboarding programs all around the country with Skateboarding Australia. They're a subsidiary of the Australian Sports Commission. So I also work with the system, with the government, who has come up with this grand idea that we'll slap a skate park down here and magically all of the people in that community that want to ride that skateboard will obviously self-manage themselves and it will all be sweet, and hey presto, we can tick that box, we helped that subculture, cool, we can move on to making more money or whatever it is the government wants to do. So I work directly with the government in relation to skateboarding too, which is a fascinating role that I play in our federal community. I'm also a musician, I'm a martial artist, I'm a meditator. I just put that meditator there because it rhymed with M and it sounded good. But that's basically me, guys. That's a basic summary of who I am and what I do. Now, I want to talk about why I've titled this Metacognition, Empathy, and the Recovery of the Human Spirit. Essentially, over the course of the last 10 years, when I've been really studying psychology, I felt innately quite sick, quite unwell during the process. There was something about it that really didn't sit with me, it didn't work. And most of you guys, I'm sure, I've spoken to some people out there who essentially have agreed with me that psychology as a discipline makes them feel sick. After so many years and deciding that I definitely never want to go down the clinical psychology pathway, I started actually working with some colleagues who did brave that clinical lineage and started practicing. Now, these are people that I would call visionary psychologists. They're doing things that no other clinical psychologist earning money is doing in our society. One of them is a very, very good friend of mine named Wolf Scott. We play music together and train martial arts together. And Wolf is at the forefront of what I can share with you as being labelled recovery psychology. I just want to explain this a little bit. If you think about how psychology has worked, not as necessarily a node of consciousness, but as an industry. It is in the industry's best interests to keep on creating categories of psychopathology. And if you've ever looked at this big fat book called the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM, you'll notice that over the years it's growing fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. Well, it doesn't take a genius to work out that if we keep on doing this, this is going to keep on growing, and pretty soon there'll be a category for every single one of us. And then maybe we can all get money out of the government out of it. That'd probably be a cool idea, actually. Take that one a little bit further. However, what recovery psychology is about is acknowledging this fact and acknowledging that this doesn't really serve us as humanity, that this is only categorizing us. And so the visionary psychologists that I have contact with, they are actually starting to let go of the idea of therapy and practice and all this sort of stuff. And they sit across from a client and they essentially say, okay, so they hear this story and the client tells them, I've done this and I've done that and I've had these experiences and I've been diagnosed with this and I've been diagnosed with that and I've got this and that and I take this and blah, 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 blah. Well, these guys go, okay, do you want to recover from that? Straight away, this throws the client into this cognition about the unwellness that has been totally thrust upon them by the system. From here, this individual can start realizing that their labels, their categories, their medications, and all the rest of it are not them. That there is a spirit, there is a being underlying all of that. And that is something that they've become disenfranchised from. They no longer have any real references for, and thus they don't really understand who they are. And so it comes down to the question, does it really make a difference whether or not you are you, or whether or not you are a puppet being led by a system? So, good news, everybody. This is actually real, and people are actually practicing this now. This is actually out there in the world. There are psychologists actually saying, I'm not going to diagnose you, but do you want to recover? This is happening, guys, all right? That's the first bit of good news that I want to give to you. All right? Recovery is nigh. So that's why recovery. So, as I said to you before, I've been studying anthropology and sociology as well. So I can't really pull our cultural and our social structures apart from our psychological structures. They're one and the same to me. There are different viewpoints. They're the micro, meso, and macro versions of different understandings of consciousness. So the reason that I chose to establish this discussion in the recovery of the human spirit is because what I'm talking about is that exact same principle that I just offered to you, instead of in an individual psychology context, I'm talking about on a big group cultural context. I have particularly chosen to put it in this context because we have some incredible speakers here this weekend. We have some amazing people. You've probably already seen some of them, and there's more to come. Now, talking about the medicine and psychedelic experiences and all of these sort of incredible tools that hopefully a lot of us resonate with, that's why we all made it here, this is great. However, if we are expanding our understanding of our consciousness using these tools, using the medicine, using these plants, if we do it from a platform of an already maladaptive and completely shattered framework, we don't really have a lot of hope for what the medicine will bring, what the psychedelic experiences will bring, and what we can truly do for humanity. So this understanding that I'm offering comes with getting more out of this weekend. And that is that we all hold structures of culture, of cosmology. We all have frameworks which act as filters, and we will benefit from what I refer to as neutralizing those filters and restructuring them so that we can use the information, the knowledge, the wisdoms that are coming through this weekend to our advantage. Really important point about recovery, guys. This is not a one-off practice. This is not, I'll do a workshop and I'll meditate for 10 days and bam, I'm sorted. This is not an attempt to try and offer you guys a self-therapy or a healing practice. This is work that needs to go on and on in every moment. In every moment. Check in with yourself every now and again. Maybe make it a once a week, once a day, if you have the inclination and time thing. Where am I, and have I recovered from that last 34 years? I've got 34 years behind me. Have I recovered from that last 34 years before I take this step forward? You get what I'm trying to offer here? Strip it back every moment that you want. Any time that you feel as though something is not serving you, it's not because it's not for you. It's simply because the platform, the framework, the filters through which you're allowing it to enter your consciousness are not set up to resonate with your understandings. And therefore, the assimilation of those concepts does not actually eventuate or manifest. Here, recovery offers you that opportunity to strip it back and see what those wisdoms might actually offer you. So that's why I'm using this dialogue, recovery. So I've just been talking about this, the patterns of our cultural pathology. One thing that I like to do, and academics did kind of encourage me to do this, is one good thing that academia offered me, is to strip things down so that they're simple. And the things I'm referring to actually can be understood quite simply in three main nodes of our consciousness. And these are those nodes that are responsible for our cultural pathology that I keep referring to. And this is an understanding that our cultural path, that is our pathology, is produced by and is a product of how we treat our bodies, of how we use our mind, and how we relate to our environment. Okay? Do we all agree on that? Yeah? How we treat our bodies? It's a pretty important point of our culture, yeah? This includes what food we might be including in our bodies. This is a cultural thing, yeah? See, how we treat our bodies is produced by and is a product of our culture. How we use our mind, yeah? You in agreement of this, guys? Yeah? How we use our mind is a product of and is produced by our culture. And then how we relate to our environment. Yeah, you agree with me? How we relate to our environment produces our culture and is a product of our culture. Cool. Didn't get every head nodding, but 100th monkey says I can go on. Enough heads. So one thing I want to share with you that essentially is the absolute pinnacle of Western psychology, really. All these different psychologists gave us all this amazing stuff, but really, for me, what I'm about to share with you here, if you can't see it, is a summary of everything that psychology is all about. It's essentially taught us that what goes on up here is all in relation to our body and our environment. Okay? So what we say in psychology is that all our well-being is essentially a resonance of our bio-psycho-social interactivity, which is what I just got agreements from, that our culture is a product and produced by our biology, our psychology, and our sociology. Okay? So these are just terminologies. I'm just going to use them and share them with you because I found them useful. And it's one thing that psychology does offer that I found useful. So, I like to offer models. Now, hopefully you can see this enough, but we've just got biological, psychological, and social here, what I just talked about. And essentially, it's really, really important to understand how these interact together. So this is a model that's used in psychology, but this is so new for psychology. You won't find it in any textbook. It's too new for any printing press at the moment. But this is the pinnacle of psychology. So I'm glad you guys are smiling. You get it. I know you guys get it. So one way to think about this, I mean, just this alone is a really, really good way to be able to help us out as individuals. It says to us that if there isn't this equal relationship between these nodes, then we're going to have a misalignment. Things aren't going to come together. Think about it this way: if we have way too much biology kind of stuff, for example, I know people that are so caught up with their raw food vegan diet, and they're incredibly biologically humming. However, I can't have dinner with them, like they won't come out and celebrate with me and my family on special occasions. So that social node goes a little bit out of whack. And when that goes out of whack, then this whole system is out of whack, and headaches come on, and everything's all misaligned. Okay? You guys feel what I'm talking about here? We all experience it in every moment on all of these levels. Well, to paint this picture for you, you can hopefully see straight up. Not even talking about the sacred geometry of it all. But when these are actually aligned, we get this point in the middle where all of these converge, and this is just on the basic visual geometry of it all. But right in the middle, that node is what we understand as our spirit. Now, this is a topic that, psychology had to call it parapsychology when we got to this point. Let's talk about spirit. Oh, we'll call it parapsychology because it's too hard for us to come to terms with. But bang, right in the middle there is what I'm finding in my practices studying this stuff for 10 years is I now have an understanding of how this model is balanced out and how I can access my spirit and truly experience being. This is the main thesis of what I'm offering you guys today. Now, essentially, I like to call these nodes, the biological, psychological, and now we've just added in this spiritual node as well. They're all nodes of consciousness. Now, the way that I've drawn this here is inconsequential. I also like to think about it, it's really pretty hard to see that, hey, but what I've done is I've just changed that model so that rather than being labelled, they're just nodes. And you can see now we've got actual geometric patterns forming, and we've got pyramids and all. This stuff's been around for a long time. A long time. And this is one of the other reasons that I really wanted to do this presentation, because I feel that while I could sit here and I could tell you about my ayahuasca experiences and the shamans that I have in my life and what I've learned from them, there is a lot of amazing presentations on all that sort of stuff. And I really wanted to just give you something that is actually fairly modern in terms of how science has actually dedicated itself to trying to understand ayahuasca and spirituality and shamanism and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to keep it in this language. So basically, what I want to present to you is the idea that if this system is not aligned, we're not resonating with our spirit and not truly being, then we're going to feel off. This is what it means to be unwell, to have a psychopathology or have a social pathology. So what I'm offering you guys here is this understanding that as a culture, we have exactly the same nodes. And if we're all eating McDonald's and junk and all the rest of it, the same thing happens. As a culture, our psychology goes out, and our social patterns are just askewed. Everything's out of whack. So that right there with the biological, psychological, and social can be seen, and I learned it by studying psychology, which is just one little aspect of our reality. However, I want you to also think about it in terms of culture. You could also think about it in terms of cosmos. You could also think about it in terms of cellular, atomistic. it's got the same relationships, the same patterns reside there too. So, what I would love to see in this world, I've got young children, and the world that I want them to grow up in is a world where we can all be familiar with and align with our true sense of being to the degree where we can have a resonant culture which allows us to be whoever it is. Whether we're a skateboarder, yeah? Whether we're a graffiti artist, whether we're a drug-taking party maniac, whether we're a psychedelic researcher with an extremely adaptive intent, that we can do that work and we can be exactly who we are without judgment, without discrimination, and without prejudice. So this model is something that I offer to you. How you apply it is entirely a personal journey. The next bit of my presentation is telling you a little bit about how I have learned to access some of these nodes. And in that sense, it has allowed me an opportunity to start really becoming aligned with my spirit and my true sense of being. And the mechanisms that I'm going to share with you, I have summarized in 2 very basic concepts. It takes 2 concepts to access these 3 nodes. And these concepts are metacognition and empathy. Now, super basic terms, but I want to explore them a little bit so you guys really understand them a little bit. Metacognition has, in a sense, been started by that salad dressing dude, Socrates. And Plato, yeah, they stood on the steps of the Greek Colosseums and they thought about thinking. Well, essentially that's what metacognition is. However, I want you to try and strip back your understanding of what you think about thinking and understand that metacognition can now become a tool about how to recode our thinking. I want to share with you a little bit about how I came to work with metacognition as a tool. I got invited to be part of a group. It was an online internet group, forum. The group's called Metacogs. There is some incredible minds in this group, people from all around the world. I got asked to be part of it by an incredible friend named Glistening Deepwater. She's a practicing Buddhist monk, self-renounced spiritualist. There are other people on it from multi-billionaire people who want to renounce their billions and start doing service spiritual work. It's an incredible group of people. Essentially, we started this dialogue online. We put it out there and we said, what do you think about the way that you think? So I ask you that question right now. What do you guys, each of you as individuals think about the way that you think? You got another answer, Ty? The way that you think is about the world. Yeah, interesting, but really great platform to understand the innocence of a child. The thinking patterns are about the world. Now that's a pretty adaptive thinking pattern. He's my son, by the way. But that's exactly my point. What are you thinking about? Is your thinking the way that you think about you? If it is, then I also heard Dan talking about the ego. This is a perpetuation of the ego. So can you think about thinking about others? If you've never tried it, I encourage you. I implore you to have a shot at it. Think about thinking about feelings. Think about the way that you think about your reality. Now, it's an interesting concept. And what is really, really challenging is to get past the idea of just thinking about reality, to use that last example. Okay, we go into our brain and I go, okay, I'm going to think about my reality. Well, what does this mean, to think about reality? Okay, my reality is A, B, C, D, or whatever. But no, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is think about how you're actually going about thinking about your reality.
Because the way that you're thinking about your reality, if you're just thinking about it, is through those filters, through those paths that you've come to get here, which include all the filters, all of the frameworks, all of the expectations, all of your upbringing, all the immediate exposure, all the teachers that you've had, all your parents' wishes that they've put onto you. So what I'm encouraging you to reflect on is a capacity for us as humans being to actually think about the way that we think. This is metacognition. I asked a couple of the guys from the Metacogs group to share with me, to share with you guys their understanding about this. So you don't just take my word for it, and I might not have explained it very well. You still might be sitting there going, how can I think about thinking about reality? Hopefully this might help a little bit. This is from my amazing sister, Glistening Deepwater. Glistening says, for me, metacognition is being able to really know my own mind. When I'm aware of how I think, I can choose to think in other ways that allow me to see more than one side of what I'm looking at. I begin to realize that what I'm looking at looks the way it does to me because of how I'm looking at it. I can choose to see things another way. I can choose to see how others are seeing things. And this allows me to understand them better. Awesome quote. Love Glisson. She's amazing. If you ever get to meet her, she resides here in far northern Queensland. Hope you get to meet her while you're here. So that's a brilliant way of why you might want to actually start practicing this. Right there, what Glisson said, okay, you might be having a challenge with the way that you relate to someone. So a relationship is going out of whack. Well, what Glisson's offering to us right there is that, okay, well, if I step back and think about how I'm thinking about how I relate to this person, I have then the opportunity to actually realize that the way that I'm thinking about how I relate to this person is actually causing these constraints in communication. It's causing these breakdowns of understanding. It's causing this conflict empathically to occur. So from this point, we can totally strip that back and actually go, okay, well, I'm going to stop. And for a second here, I'm actually going to think about how you might be feeling for a second. This is a process called sympathizing, but it actually proves the point that we can recode the way that we relate to someone simply from thinking about the way we think about how we relate to them. Here's another quote. This is from another member of the Metacogs group called Dan RD. I only know him as Dan RD. He's from America, Dan. And Dan said to me, metacognition is an inquisitive state of monitoring one's unstoppable learning process. How cool is that? Monitoring one's unstoppable learning process or evolution. It observes patterns in the mind, which, when noticed, capital N, can either be engaged, capital E, or not. If engaged, capital E, an experience emerges that relates to a pattern, maybe a capital pattern, perhaps. If we mindfully mull the pattern, it triggers awareness of a meta lesson or a sort of meaningful aha moment. Pattern dynamics is very helpful for this. Any of you guys ever heard of pattern dynamics before? Couple? One? Amazing. That's amazing. Well, awesome. I'll share it with you. Pattern dynamics. Think about it. The dynamics of patterns. How patterns work. I showed you guys a pattern before. There was a model there that had a pattern to it. What are the dynamics of that pattern? As I said, if we have too much biology, too much thinking, too much sociology, it's all going to go out of whack. The pattern is not producing that alignment, that resonance with spirit, that actual manifestation of being. So patterns are really important. Pattern dynamics specifically, and hopefully, so what was your name, bro? Joel. Hopefully, and what Joel's actually knew that I was talking about is it actually has been written. There is a manual that has been produced that is called Pattern Dynamics. This manual was produced by an amazing dude named Tim Winton. Tim was one of the first people to actually get federal funding to try a model of pure community sustainability. He got a property down in Victoria, and he basically got all this funding, and he started this amazing property down in Victoria, where the goal of it was to see whether or not the principles of permaculture design and sustainability dialogue would actually serve a community so that it could be completely self-sufficient, that it didn't need any resources brought from inside, from outside of itself, and it could work. Well, it worked beautifully for 10 years. And on the 10-year mark, they put on the brakes and went, right, this is just too much now. The one thing that Tim found out was that having principles of permaculture design and sustainability management and all this sort of stuff built into a community model was all well and good. However, each one of those individual participants that were part of that community had their own ideas about how to apply these principles. They had their totally different agendas with what they wanted to produce as a community. So therefore, there was an issue at the end of the day with being able to apply these amazing sustainability principles because of the way that people thought about it and because of the patterns of thinking that produced the way that they thought about it, more importantly. So Tim sat down after he packed up the village and wrote a book called Pattern Dynamics. He's actually now put it all up online. Google it, patterdynamics.org. He's made this incredible resource where you can go in and learn about pattern dynamics. But I do have a quote here from him. He says that pattern dynamics is a language of visual patterns, a sustainability pattern language that will help you understand, communicate and design solutions at the systems level. By learning pattern dynamics, you will gain a powerful new capacity as a systems thinker, a skill that is often thought to be unteachable. And up until now, it has been. It's been a concept which most of us who care, who do think that there is a difference to be made, we understand that systems thinking is a very important way because we're living in a world of systems all the time. However, to teach it was a different story. So that's exactly what Tim's designed. With this skill, you will learn to create cultures of sustainability and to facilitate deep sustainability design, which are sustainability strategies that help resolve complex challenges at any level of organisation, from the community to the planetary and in any domain from business to governance to institutional. That's Tim Winton. So check it out. He's done it so well that, just to share with you, because only Josh has had the chance to actually engage with this dialogue, I'll share a brief bit of beauty about it. Tim's work basically is that any pattern, which comes from plants to cultures to music to anything, it starts with a seed. Okay, so every plant, a really easy analogy, starts from a seed. Okay, it grows up from the seed. Now, once it actually busts out of that husk of that seed and it starts growing, it faces new complexities, okay, that grows out through the ground and sunlight comes in. Sunlight hits it. Wow, there's change here. Something's going on. It needs to start up a new lineage of patterns so that it can actually enjoy that sun and work symbiotically with that sun. Then it grows up further. Another node hits and fruit starts coming. Things change and all the rest of it. So with Tim's work, essentially what his work is all about, pattern dynamics, is a dialogue that starts with anything starting from a seed. Not literally a seed that we plant in the ground, but a seed of thought, a seed of light, a seed of... It could be anything at all. And from that seed, there are certain principles, there are certain dynamics that actually allow it to thrive and continue, or to completely and utterly just disintegrate, neutralize, and extinguish. Okay? For example, when we plant a seed, we'll go back to that planting that seed in the ground. Right? We need to... It's got to be something. It's got to be a plant. All right? One of the principles that Tim posited is that everything has a complete polarity to it. Okay? So we're either going to get the plant or we're not. All right? If we don't understand the juxtaposition between those two, having a plant, not having a plant, then we're just going to end up getting confused about it. There is also, besides polarity, as an order of dynamics, there is also, for example, rhythm needs to actually come into play as well in pattern dynamics. So a seed will need water. Now, if you just pump that seed full of water and saturate it, it's going to saturate and it's going to drown and it's not actually going to propagate. However, if you rhythmically, every day, give that seed beautiful, beautiful H2O in a rhythmic pattern, you guys tried this? What happens? Boom! Something comes up out of the ground. Okay? So polarity, rhythms. Hopefully you get... I haven't designed this presentation to be about pattern dynamics, unfortunately, but Tim has nutted this out to the degree where there is first order principles of pattern dynamics, and then second order and third order principles. It's amazing work. Fully encourage you to check it out. So that in a sense sort of summarizes why I would even be talking about accessing the nodes of our consciousness via thinking about thinking. It allows us to recode, to repattern the way in which we actually interact with our environment, the way we treat our bodies, and therefore gives us an opportunity to actually align our biopsychosocial nodes and actually resonate with our spirit. Okay? Really, really happy to field any further questions about metacognition afterwards. However, the other aspect that I've come to understand is really helpful in accessing these nodes is a little concept called empathy. Now, I'm always really surprised at how empathy is still understood in the brain, okay? I'm here to tell you that if you're thinking about empathy, you're not quite on the page of it, all right? Sympathy and empathy are completely not the same things, okay? But empathy, because I posited metacognition as thinking about thinking, as I was putting this presentation together, I thought, what a cool way for people to help people understand about empathy. Empathy is feeling about feeling. That's what it is. Feeling about feeling. All right? Now, I want to bring to your attention at this stage too that I've laid in this presentation, and I'm bringing it to your point because it is very hard to see that screen. And I actually want to show you that these nodes that I did back here, the reason I did these ball things here is because I actually coded them. As I go through my presentation, there is actually, those nodes are actually paired with some of the things that we're talking about. So this in itself is a way to pattern my presentation to help you understand exactly which of these slides are referring to which node in that model that I brought at the beginning. So this empathy thing, feeling about feeling, this actually covers, whether you believe it or not, both the biological and the social nodes of our model. Why? Well, because empathy is feeling, for starters. Feeling is a biological phenomena. It is a product of our chemicals that happen inside of our brain. However, it is a biological expression of our interactivity with our environment. The fact that it is an interactivity with our environment makes it social. So the monk that sits on top of a mountain meditating for years and years and years and years and years actually has begun to start disconnecting their understanding of empathy because they don't have a referent, they don't have a social referent point. With nobody there on that mountaintop with them to enjoy that feeling of that meditation that they've been doing for years and years and years and years and years, they don't empathically understand the results of the work that they're doing. So empathy allows us access to both how we feel about our feelings about another. So when we're interacting with somebody, it makes us feel a certain way. This is why empathy is so valuable to us at this time. We have been practicing patterns of being which has been about us, about individualism. It is important. We've needed to understand the dynamics of our consciousness in this capacity. We've been doing it now for X amount of thousands of years, and I believe that we're all here at an event called Enthean Gaia because we all are understanding that it's probably beneficial for us to actually start reconnecting back so that now that we've got a handle on us as individuals, the parameters and the dynamics of my individuality, if I don't actually start connecting with others, I'm going to be that monk sitting on top of the mountain and I'm going to die alone. So, again, back to why I sung that amazing Pearl Jam song, Indifference. How much difference does it make to you? And if it doesn't matter to you, if you want to sit on a mountaintop and die alone, I wish you grace and all the best with that endeavour. However, we're all here at a gathering, so there is a bit of an assumption here that most of you guys actually do want to connect with other people. I do. That's why I put this presentation together. So here's just a couple little things. These are not quotes. These are actually just ways that I describe and explain empathy when I'm doing lectures and stuff on empathy. Empathy is because it's feeling about feeling. Empathy can be experiencing another's state. Not just thinking that you're experiencing somebody else's plight, but actually feeling the way that someone else feels. And if you want to understand more about this, have a look at Jeremy Rifkin's work. He wrote an incredible book called The Empathic Civilization. And if you don't like reading, there is an incredible RSA animation on the empathic civilization. RSA's this incredible illustrator's drawing while a presenter's talking. And it's an incredible presentation. But Jeremy Rifkin goes on to understand empathy, the etiology of it, the symptomology of empathy, talking about the neurology of empathy. You guys might have heard these things called mirror neurons that keep coming up in dialogue nowadays. These are real things. These are actual cellular structures within our body whose sole roles it is to literally take visual, auditory, somatosensory, olfactory information, whatever our senses have got, from the environment, plug it straight into these mirror neurons, and then mirror that feeling that it can pick up on that is emanating through the empathic resonance of another being. So our mirror neurons are biological parts of our body that allow us to actually feel what another person's feeling. So I'm here to tell you as an academic and as a researcher in this that, you know, that feeling when you're getting with someone and you're both looking at each other and you know and they know and you know that they know you know and they know that you know that you know and they know, nothing said. Well, that is empathy, right? You're feeling together, and it is not just the case that you think that you're feeling the same as them. You guys co-created that feeling. You both are feeling it. That's what empathy is. Okay. So experiencing another state. There's another way of describing it is the state of feeling synchronous with another being. Let's get away from this fact that empathy has this way of making us feel with another person. We can actually be synchronous with another person with empathy, with an empathic resonance with another being. I'm doing it with you guys right now. I can see your faces. I can feel... I can't see for shit. My eyes are terrible. But I can feel you. Some of you, you've been distracted. There's other stuff going on. I can feel that too. You know, this is actually being synchronous together. You guys can feel each other sitting around you. You're synchronous with each other, giving me the respect, listening to my dialogue. Right? This is what empathy can do for us, guys. This is, as a concept, has amazing, amazing applications. Lastly, empathy produces a biological resonance with socially derived aspects of consciousness. So again, it's that outside of us. Empathy can be felt with nature, with Pachamama, with Gaia, with birds, with animals, with fish, with anything we can cultivate an empathic resonance with. We all know it. We all talk about it when we're off tap and we're having these D&Ms and all that sort of stuff, but it's real. There is research out there, guys. The mirror neurons are actually, they can be pulled out of our body now. We know that they exist. This is occurring. It is going on in our consciousness, guys. So, essentially, this empathy concept allows us to have access to both the biological and the social nodes. Did you guys have a question?
Yeah, your heart.
That's your question. My heart. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Ty. What's that, buddy? Why is my voice loud? I don't know. I guess that I was just made that way. Thanks for the question, though. So, guys, what I'm offering here is an opportunity to assimilate with these two concepts, metacognition and empathy. And if you're so inclined, I encourage you to explore these concepts for the reason that they allow you access and can activate the biological through our empathy and our empathic resonance, feeling another, with our psychological, is our metacognition, and our social to the degree where we can align our spirit and truly experience being. And this is my journey. This is what I'm sharing with you. This is not something that I read in a book. This is something that I've actually experienced, and it's what I'm sharing with you guys. So, if you're so inclined, how this work begins, go right back to thinking about thinking. How do I think about how I feel is what I'm offering you to do today. Think about how you feel in relation to another. Think about how you think about how you feel. And then you can start understanding that there are patterns in play here. There are patterns at work that are deep-seated patterns. And these patterns are not just patterns of our psychology. They're patterns of ourselves. They're patterns that have been reinforced by our environment, by our cities that we build, and by the nature that has to work its way around us. These are very deep-seated patterns, guys. And if we have a hope as a culture of being able to access these nodes and align our biology, our psychology, and our sociology, or our sociality, we really must start understanding that to do that, we need to recode or repattern our existence. Now, it's not just the case of from where you are right here, right now, you can suddenly go, right, I'm going to rethink my whole gig here, and I'm going to pattern everything so that I'm nice to people, and then that way, if I'm nice to them, when I'm in their presence, they're going to make me feel good. Remember what I said at the beginning. And here I come full circle. Without doing the work of actually recovering from these deep-seated patterns that are already in your consciousness. And because they're in your consciousness, they're already in your mind, in your psychology. They're already in your body, your biology. And they're already in your sociality, your society. It's really, really important that the first thing you think about is whether or not it makes a difference to you that we recover from these maladaptive patterns. If it makes a difference, then I invite you to join me in recovering our human spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam Walker. We've got a bit of time. I'm sure there's plenty of people out in the crowd who'd like to pick Adam's brain. Would anyone like to ask a question?
So, what role does therapy play in this at all? Like, or do we just start thinking about thinking and feeling about feeling?
Well, I guess therapy is a pattern in itself. Yeah? So, as a pattern that we need somebody to be able to help align us, this is something that we really need to decide for ourselves whether or not we want to take on that work of actually thinking about how we think about our recovery is going to determine whether or not we actually require therapy from that pattern, that process. So the colleagues that I have essentially helped gather some insights from this they would not be able to necessarily practice this as a method in therapy. It is, however, the reality that they are starting to practice including or introducing a dialogue about recovering from therapy. So if you're caught in a pattern of therapy, and this can extend into any types of therapy really, it is a requirement of that individual to seriously think about, well, for how long do I need this therapy? For how many times am I going to go and see this other person that is providing me with this therapy? And if that thought process, that cognition, it actually manifests the reflection that, well, I don't want to go back to that person anymore. I don't want to continue this therapy. And if I don't stop going to this therapy, I could be doing it for the rest of my life. Herein lies a tool to be able to rethink about what therapy is offering to that person as an individual. Does that answer your question okay?
I think so. So is the practice of what you're talking about really just taking a step back and reflecting in these two ways? Feeling about feeling and thinking about thinking?
Simple as that. Thanks, brother.
Hello. When you were talking about mirror neurons,
Mm-hmm.
it got me thinking about the little bit that I know about NLP. And I was wondering about how the relationship between the two, and that from what I know about NLP, you can kind of, from what I understand, when you're naturally connecting with somebody and you're having that empathic resonance,
Mm-hmm.
you start to mirror each other. And when practicing NLP, you might kind of try to facilitate that when it's not happening organically,
Mm-hmm.
because those mirror neurons aren't engaged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what was your name?
Andy.
Andy. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because essentially what I offered in my presentation is a real scaled down version of NLP in a sense. So in being able to create that empathic resonance enough to be able to reprogram our linguistics that starts in here, this is exactly a metacognitive practice in itself. So thank you for bringing that up, Andy. Sorry though, was there a direct question in that?
I think I was just wondering if you really can kind of facilitate that empathic resonance with intention rather than it happening on its own.
This is something that I'm definitely still exploring every moment myself, and I'm doing it with you right now. It's something that my response to it... Ty, can you just put your hand down a bit, please, buddy? My immediate response to it is that facilitating it as an individual is going to be stooped with ego. And therefore, what I'm actually referring to here at its core, and I am still exploring this, Andy, is that it needs to be a co-created experience so that it isn't led by one person at all. Because even if this one person is incredibly good at neutralizing their language, incredibly good at holding space, it's always going to be subject to that individual's filters and processing and all the rest of it. So in answer to your inquiry, I'm still exploring it, but my deep-seated belief is that it's much more to do with the experience together and co-creating that empathic resonance. And therefore, mirror neurons are firing both at the same time. They're mirroring each other back. You ever held a mirror up to a mirror? See what happens? Yeah? Big, long corridor of mirrors. This is infinite, yeah? So if we can have this infinite, interaction which is serving, I would imagine it would be quite like that. Cool. Thank you so much.
Just for the rest of us, what's NLP?
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Awesome.
it then actually, but I'll come up with a new one quickly.
Yeah.
There's, I suppose, the way I sort of received it, the metacognition that you're talking about, in the way that it's actually applied to recover ourselves, is a kind of a negative principle. In a way, you're seeing patterns and you're deprogramming, you're recovering, as you said. I guess I was thinking, or asking the question to myself, what then do you do once you've deprogrammed? And I was wondering, I suppose in terms of pattern dynamics, is empathy the seed from which you then build back up again?
If we want to co-create, if we want to exist here together, I am suggesting that empathy can be a way in which we can be guided by our co-beings so that we know that the patterning that we're recoding has actually some group meaning. There is some sort of global sort of function, adaptive function of the way that we're thinking. And in saying that too, really important point, Joel, by no means does recovering from this, and I definitely need to state this because I use the term stripping it right back. I'm not talking about lobotomy, and I'm not talking about totally clearing the slate. I'm talking about stripping back the patterns of thought that don't serve, that are not adaptive, that do not nurture our co-created spirit. So, does that answer your question, Joel?
I think so. It possibly just raises one more small
Sure.
question.
Yeah, please.
How do you decide what is a negative pattern? As opposed to a positive?
Don't worry about deciding. That's where empathy comes into the picture. So don't worry about deciding, because it's hard to see the forest for the trees, yeah? Go with your heart. Go with how you're feeling. And what I'm suggesting here is that if you can't see the forest for the trees, so if you're not wholly aware of the negative patterns of thought that you're perpetuating and reinforcing all the time, then it's going to very be likely that you're going to be confused about what you're feeling. In comes somebody else. There can be a point of reference. If no one wants to be around you, there's a good chance that it's because you feel crap. Yeah? And empathically, you're making other people feel crap too. So herein lies a reason why we would want to cultivate and develop empathic resonance. Because using another as a point of reference, we can then start feeling whether or not the way we're thinking is for the greater good.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, brother. What do you got for us, Ty?
What is in your future?
What is in the future? It's up to our patterns. Totally up to our patterns.
We've still got a little bit of time before our next presenter, Richard King, starts. So probably got time for one more question. Anybody?
Hi, Adam. I did arrive a little late, so I actually missed most of the talk, but I did vibe with what we're sharing here.
Great, cool.
I actually don't have a question.
Thanks for filling time.
I'm sure I could come up with one. Just to elaborate a little on, or to kind of extend upon the question around what's being explored at the moment, yourself as well. The question itself, could you remind me of what that was about? Because I did get a hit on it.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, what was your name?
Adam.
Adam, nice name. I got told, what was it? Is anybody here that knows Portuguese? I got told by Marcelo Mars up at the amazing mate tent. When you meet someone that's the same name as you in Portuguese, they say "Shada." So, what was your name again?
JL. I do go by both names.
Say Adam. Go on. Say Adam.
Well, there's actually an Adam sitting next to me.
Shut up! But yeah, my entire presentation was titled Metacognition, Empathy and the Recovery of the Human Spirit. So as somebody who's endured 10 years of academic psychology training, and I did also did a social sciences degree majoring in anthropology and sociology. Essentially, I had the world of shamanism and altered states of consciousness just collide with modern Western psychology. So essentially, I've taken some of the dialogue from the discipline, the scientific discipline of psychology, and I've essentially tried to mesh that together with models of consciousness and wellness, in a sense. So my main thesis here is that our everything around us, our cultures and our thoughts and our bodies and everything, are a manifestation, a product of patterns which are set in place. And if we don't like what we're seeing, it's time to repattern. What I'm suggesting is that it's not enough to just, from where we are here, let's think of better ways. That's not really, it hasn't worked for me thus far. If it's worked for any of you guys, I'd love to hear from you. But what I'm suggesting, Adam, essentially is that first, and what we're learning in the area of psychopathology, is that it's really important to recover first from the patterns, the maladaptive patterns that have been set in motion, and then we can repattern those to allow patterns in our life that serve us, that are adaptive.
Because I did get a bit of a hit on what you said, and what I saw is that for myself, the way I've come to understand it is that it relates to, in relation to that question, to comprehending our multidimensionality and coming to a place where we're able to receive the keys that each individual holds and to be able to understand and recognise each other in that way, and then to be able to actually flow with a natural rhythm based on that as well.
Fantastic analogy. Thank you, brother. Yeah, that key line aspect of it is another thing that, you know, it's so integral to it all. To be able to allow an empathic resonance to flow with another person allows us to truly appreciate their optimal qualities and their keys that they can offer us that will unlock infinite amounts of insights if we allow that to happen. So thank you so much. That really does raise that point that essentially, yeah, and it's fantastic that someone from the audience has summarized that succinctly, that what I am offering is that I think there's a more resonant way of being together. And that's a really good summary of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
We've got our next speaker up now, Richard King. Big round of applause for Adam Walker, absolute local champion.
Thank you so much, guys.